Hi friends, chapter 12 shows us that Mr. Thompson really does miss his son a lot. And it seems as though Duncan may feel a little sorry for Mr. Thompson after all. But then he goes to school the next day. He's feeling really smart. He goes to school, and here comes Mr. Black, the math teacher, accusing him of cheating on his math test. But Duncan is feeling like, wait, no, I knew that stuff. You don't believe me? I'll take it again, right here, right now. And what does Mr. Black do? He gives him questions that were actually harder than was written on the test. So let's see if Duncan passes a test with questions that he's never done before. In chapter 13, The Sound of Music. I stared at the problem. For a moment, my mind seemed to go blank. Then I could almost feel the ants start crawling around inside my head. Without looking up, I reached for the pencil Mr. Black was holding. He handed it to me, and I began to figure. 30 seconds later, I had the answer. When I handed the paper to Mr. Black, he was staring at me as if I had just sprouted wings and flown around the room a couple of times. How did you do that? He asked. Must be you're a great teacher, I said. It was a nasty crack, but I was really mad. Mr. Black sat down at his desk. He looked at me, at the paper, and then back at me. You can go, Duncan, he said at last. Please, keep up the good work. I should have learned my lesson from that little scene. People don't want you to change too fast. Some people don't want you to change at all, because then they have to think when they deal with you. But I was too excited about my new brain to hide my light under a bushel for the moment. When I left Mr. Black's room, I went straight to the library. The librarian looked at me suspiciously. We don't circulate the swimsuit issue of Sports Illustrated, Duncan, she said when I walked through the door. That's all right, I said. I want to read a book. The look on her face was even better than the one on Mr. Black's had been. It wasn't until I got to science the next morning that I realized I had better be careful about this. Home economics had been fun. Even though I was doing better there, people just figured it was because I had settled down for a couple of days. No one thought that much of my intelligence because I didn't ruin the eggplant. Though Miss Carpoo did give me a big smile and thank me for my good work, which made me feel kind of warm inside. But when I sat down in science class, it suddenly occurred to me that if I showed off too much, Miss Jones would be bound to know what I had been up to. On the other hand, since she was the one who had fried my brains in the first place, I shouldn't have to act entirely stupid in her class either. The ones who really had a problem coping with me were the other smart kids. They had known me as Duncan the Dunce for so long that they didn't know how to react when I started answering questions that some of them couldn't figure out. Part of the reason I was getting smarter so fast was that I was reading my brains out. Or something. It only took me a day or two to realize I needed to do that in secret. The first time Patrick saw me reading a book, he pulled it out of my hand and asked me if I was turning into a geekoid. I couldn't believe he could be such a jerk. Then I remembered how I used to treat Peter Thompson. My father was no better. He told me he thought reading was a complete waste of time. So I had to do all my reading where no one could see me. 2 nights later, I stayed after school and gave myself a third zap with the brain fryer. I looked in the refrigerator for the slug thing, but it was gone. I wondered if Miss Jones had eaten it or something. To my surprise, the idea made me a little unhappy. Despite the fact that it had terrified me, I had gotten used to the little guy. Between the third session with the brain fryer and the fact that I was reading hundreds of pages a day, I could feel myself getting smarter faster and faster. Something I hadn't expected was that the more I learned, the more things made sense. Sometimes, learning one thing made 3 other things suddenly come into focus. I was starting to find the connections that made learning fun. Sheesh, listen to me. Whoever thought I would use the words learning and fun in the same sentence? Even though I was having fun, there were a few things still bothering me. Number 1 was the question of what Andromeda Jones was up to. Why had she fried my brains to begin with? And why hadn't she said or done anything about it since? Was I some kind of experiment? Had the aliens gotten together and said, Hey, let's see what happens if we make a bozo bright. I didn't particularly like that idea, though my point of view, it was working out okay for the time being. But what if, when the experiment was over, she decided to take the smartness back? That was the most frightening idea of all. I didn't think I could stand going back to being what I used to be. The second thing bothering me was the way the other kids were acting. No one knew what to think about me anymore. The only one who didn't treat me like a complete freak was Susan. My third problem was that I was getting so smart that I didn't know what to do about it. If a kid like me, or like I had been, suddenly announced that he had figured out how to create world peace, would you pay any attention to him? More important, with the president and Congress? But that was exactly the situation I found myself in. When I described a brilliant plan to end world hunger, my social studies teacher said it was silly. The next day I figured out cold fusion, only I didn't dare tell that to my science teacher since I didn't want her to know I had been tampering with her brain zapper. But can you imagine how frustrating it was? Think about it. Wrapped inside my magnificent brain was information that would have solved every one of Earth's energy problems, eliminated most of our pollution problems, and made me a billionaire in the process. And there wasn't a darn thing I could do about it. I tried. I even sent a letter to the Department of Energy telling them that I would give them the information. They sent back a very polite note letting me know in the nicest possible terms that they thought I was an idiot. That was one more thing I learned once I got smart. No one wants to listen to a kid with an idea. Sometimes I thought I could understand why old Peter had decided to go with Brock's home that night. Even so, I was feeling pretty good about myself and about what happened until the night that I went to bed and couldn't get to sleep because of the radio. At least, I thought it was the radio. "Come on, Patrick," I said. "Turn it off so I can go to sleep." "Turn what off?" "Your radio." "My radio's broken, Duncan Thorbrain, so shut up and leave me alone." I blinked. Patrick was telling the truth. I remembered hearing him complain to my mother the day before about his radio being broken. So where was the music coming from? I rolled over and the station changed. Instead of Madonna, I was getting a blast of Beethoven. I rolled back and Madonna's voice came back on. Or maybe I should say back in. Because what I figured out was this. The music was inside my head. Most people have 5 senses. Suddenly, I had 6. I had fried my brain one time too many and turned it into a radio receiver.